I grew up in Sleepy Eye, Minnesota, a little cozy town in southern Minnesota, about 4,000 people. I was a middle child of 5. My mom and dad were wonderful people. My mom was my best friend. My dad was my hero. Unfortunately, my mom and dad both died too young of colon cancer. And shortly thereafter, my youngest brother decided to take his own life. Sleepy Eye was a town where everybody sort of contributed to your growing up. My job when I was a 3rd grader was a paper route. Then later on, I cleaned bathrooms at a supper club for several years, and then I was hired at Del Monte and drove lift truck. From there, I went to college at the University of Minnesota, and I initially went into dental school thinking that that's what I would like to do, but I had one small hiccup, and that was that I really wasn't that fond of teeth. So then I went from there to the seminary for a year, and then I went into medicine. I built Riverbend Plaza and Catalyst Medical Clinic in 2000. Had the help of some wonderful people. My wife was critically involved. My 3 children were all involved. I have 3 kids, Christy, Matt, and Jack, and they're 33, 31, and 29, so they helped. And then we did an addition 4 years later and added on a building so we could house a physical therapy and bank. And then my son and I and a few others built a restaurant about a block down the road. There's a lot we can learn from college and books and things like that, but sometimes the hands-on experience of managing people, keeping track of profit and loss statements, balance sheets, meeting with your accountant to find out what kind of damages you're going to have to pay in terms of income tax at the end of the year. I learned so much, and I'm thankful that I had the chance. I've seen firsthand how government can truly kill a small business. The unending rules and regulations, they're absolutely crippling. So for me, I don't really see how anyone without some actual real-life, hands-on experience could represent folks in all avenues of life. I was asked to run in early May when a sitting legislator called and asked if I would consider running for the Senate. My response was, "What have you been smoking?" Bottom line, I met with him a few days later for breakfast when we had more time, and I asked him, "Why me?" And he said something like this. He said, "Doc, you know healthcare. You started your own clinic 15 years ago, and quite honestly, healthcare reform is the elephant in the room. If we can't handle healthcare reform and start getting a handle on the costs," he said, "there's no money left for education, transportation, parks and trails." He said something to the effect that you've been on the school board, you've been involved in transportation, you know those issues, but when it comes time for healthcare, you could help. There's not a single doctor in the House or the Senate. We're oftentimes voting on things we don't understand. What he said made sense. So for me, the tipping point to me saying, yes, I'll run, was healthcare. But I knew that I could contribute in the area of public education and transportation as well. In regards to healthcare, I've been in the business 35 years, and I have been a professor at the med school for many, many years. I do own the clinic, and I have run the administrative side of things as well. I've managed a lot of employees. So I think from the healthcare perspective, I'm solid. In terms of public education, I served on the school board for 10 years. And during that time, we were able to accomplish a lot. Perhaps the thing I'm most proud of is when I left the school board, accountability was something that was held high. There were challenges along the way, but accountability did survive, and other school districts tapped into what we did. And in terms of roadways and transportation and things like that in Carver County, I've been very involved for the last 30 years, not necessarily in a continuous fashion, but sort of hot-cold. I was very impressed with the presidency of Ronald Reagan. I was impressed with the way he was able to work with Gorbachev. And I remember glasnost. I remember openness. I don't think we're as open as we think we are. I think politicians have a tendency to forget from whence they come. I think recently there's been a little bit of a story about per diems. If Jimmy doesn't finish his spelling test because he goofed off the first 10 minutes, the teacher doesn't give him extra time at the end of it. Well, why do the legislators think that if they squander time in the first 2/3 of the session, don't get all the work done in the last third, that they can call a special session and cost the taxpayers $50,000 a day, or whatever the exact number is. If they're going to have a special session, let's do it with them paying for their own breakfast, lunch, dinner, and hotel room. This doesn't make sense. It's a terrible example to set. These are the kinds of things that I don't think we're being open enough. I hear a lot of legislators say, we shouldn't be talking about term limits. Well, why not? If the public, if the voter, if the taxpayer says, I want to talk about term limits, then by George, we should be talking about them. I'd like to go down there, and if I have to rattle the cage a little bit, I'm fine with that. I think we need to be more open. I think the public needs to know what the benefits are of being a legislator. How long do you have to serve before you're eligible for some sort of a retirement plan? How much money are you really getting? I don't think there's enough openness. Jake Coleman and I have had a chance to get together several times. I like him. He's a fine young man. Having said that, he moved into the district in the last several months. Within perhaps 100 days of being in the district, he started his campaign search. That's not something that I think works real well. There's two ways to elected office. One is to quickly run, get elected, and establish it as your career. I think the other is more consistent with the Founding Fathers' intentions. You go to work, you build a trade, you establish a profession, you learn a profession. And after a period of time, you step aside and go to serve, and then you go back to that which grounds you. I represent what the Founding Fathers originally had in mind. Jake, I think, represents sort of the new breed of professional politician, the career politician. As much as I like Jake, I don't think that's the ideal way to serve. I think we need a citizen legislature with people coming from all walks of life. And I think a young man that hasn't had a chance to spend a lot of time in the real world isn't suitably equipped, regardless of how much agreement he and I might have on the issues. I've lived here 30 years. I didn't claim the values of this area. I lived them and learned them by being people's neighbor, by being people's doctor, by teaching Sunday school to the neighborhood kids. I think I'd like to just make a comment about my family. There's an expression about marrying well, and I think I did. I outkicked my coverage. My wife has been by my side. She's a critic. She's a supporter. She's the best thing that happened to me. My 3 children, Christy, Matt, and Jack, I'm so proud of them. They've come alongside and been supportive of their dad. All the folks here at Catalyst Clinic have been terrific. Running for office arouses within oneself an odd, powerful sense of humility. I feel so humbled that some of these people are willing to spend so much time to help me do this. It's touched me, and at times it's driven me to do better, work harder, because I don't want to disappoint these people who said, we'll come alongside you and help.